StarCast 5, July 29th to 31st in Nashville, gearing up to be a huge event you don't want to miss. Amazing stage shows and live wrestling with shows from Black Label Pro, GCW, New Japan Pro Wrestling, and of course, Ric Flair's Last Match, which has an amazing lineup of talent from all over the wrestling landscape. Headlined by Ric Flair's Last Match, and you can follow the story leading up to the match over at RicFlairsLastMatch.com. We've got new episodes Mondays at 6:05 Eastern. For tickets and more information, go to StarCast.com.
How's it going, everybody? Brian Elvers and Dave Meltzer here, Wrestling Observer Radio. It is July 22, 2022, Figure4Online.com.
Did you know that Jim Valley stole my opening line for tonight's show? He didn't steal it. He came up with it himself. But as soon as Vince quit, I said, I'm opening the show, the next show I do, saying that Vince screwed Vince. And I go, but you know what? I mean, it's going to be hours before we do the show, and someone is going to say that line. And I just thought, I don't know who it's going to be. And after a couple hours, nobody did. And I go, okay. Then I got back home tonight, and it was, of all people in this world, of the millions of people in this world, it was my friend Jim Valley, who I was in no contact with all day today. And anyway, I mean, it's like the first thing I thought of when I heard that is like, that's the line. After 25 years, Vince screwed Vince.
Well, so Jim's going to have to be future endeavored after that one.
No.
But I will say that my story for today is that I was traveling the day that the first Wall Street Journal story came out. I was traveling the day that he stepped down as CEO and chairman. I was traveling the day the second Wall Street Journal came out. And literally, I was 10 minutes out the door today, and I started getting texts. Holy shit, people were saying.
Yeah, you want to know me? I thought I've got a couple hours before I have to do the update, and I have a lot of shit to do. So I left the house and I just said, I'm going to the gym and I didn't bring my phone with me. So I came back, and then it was just like all of this stuff. And it's just like, you did it to me again. And I had all these stuff that I had to do tonight, which I didn't cancel, although perhaps I should have, but I didn't. And here we are.
Well, quite frankly, he could have resigned on a Thursday.
No, it was going to be the minute. This was all perfectly timed. It was Friday right after the stock market closed because they didn't want,
I was making an Observer deadline joke. But yes, obviously this was perfect timing in real life.
Yeah. It was going to be, if he was going to do it, he was going to do it Friday at 1:05 p.m. our time, 4:05 Eastern.
Well, in case you're listening to this, by the way, and you don't know what's going on, Vince McMahon announced today that he was retiring. And he tweeted, and then he had a public statement, and then he had the most fucking bizarre statement that he sent to the wrestlers, where he joked about his... I could actually probably find it here.
Just read it. Or I can get it for you. I got it in my million pieces of paper around here.
I've got it here as well.
Okay.
We're very well prepared for this right here. Yeah, actually, I don't have it. But anyway, the point of it was he basically talked about how his level-headed presence at Gorilla would no longer be around, and how the wrestlers...
That was meant as a joke, by the way.
Of course, and the wrestlers needed to represent and blah, blah, blah. And then he finished the email to the talent, mind you, with a plug for tonight's episode of SmackDown. So that was absolutely bizarre. Here's the email. This is what he sent to the actual talent. Okay. To all WWE superstars, as I approach 77 years old, OMG, am I really that old? I feel it's time for me to retire. I have thoroughly enjoyed sharing my passion, wisdom, and love of the business with you. No longer will you see the smiling, docile, level-headed, calm presence at Gorilla every week. Your dedication to WWE will ensure that our company will continue to grow and prosper. Our organization is nothing without you. You are WWE's only natural resource, chosen to perform in front of a global audience. You are all WWE global ambassadors. Carry the WWE flag wherever you go. Wave it high and proud, and bust your ass to be all you can be as a person and as a performer. One other thing, I won't be with you, but I will be watching. Remember to keep your hands up, grab a hold, and sell. By the way, SmackDown airs live tonight at 8 Eastern, 7 Central.
Which I must say, obviously that was meant to get out because all the wrestlers know when SmackDown airs. And, half of them are there. We're at SmackDown. The other half were at home, watching, probably pretty shocked at everything that went down. It was the craziest day maybe in the history of the company, among the craziest anyway.
What's funny about it too? What's funny about it too is the retirement of Vince McMahon is easily the biggest story of the last 25, 30 years, with the exception of the death of WCW. And
Benoit.
Benoit was a huge story, like, to the mainstream. But as far as, like, ramifications throughout the industry, it's the death of WCW and it's Vince McMahon retiring. What the hell's going to happen when he's gone?
And the birth of AEW.
Sure. But the irony of the two that I mentioned is that in the case of WCW, nobody thought that WCW could ever fold, and they did. And nobody ever thought that Vince would step away from WWE unless he died. And obviously there are reasons
for the last couple of...
But in fact, he did.
For the last couple of weeks, we all knew it was a possibility. Like, maybe even a good possibility that something would happen. And obviously this was forced, So, and especially, he had told the talent, like, 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago. Well, actually almost 3 weeks ago now. So 3 weeks ago, he had told the talent in Vegas that I could get you the exact wording among the millions of things I have here. That he was going to always be here no matter what. This was 3 weeks ago. He told the talent.
How about that?
Yeah. Yep.
Well, he's gone, and the new co-CEOs are Stephanie McMahon and Nick Khan. Triple H is back as the, VP of Talent Relations, or whatever his
Executive
VP of Talent Relations. So John Laurinaitis appears to be history.
Yeah.
And obviously the big question going forward, probably the most important question, really, and there's a lot of them, but who is going to be the new Vince McMahon? Who is going to oversee all creative?
As far as oversee all creative, that's a really interesting question. There's going to be a power grab. Now, tonight's show was Bruce and Ed Koskey, but Paul Levesque was also there, and I guess he was from what I gather, he was the closest to being the Vince McMahon. As far as he was the overseer tonight, whether that is, because he was there and Stephanie was there, whether he's going to be going on the road to these shows, every Monday and Friday, that could be asking a lot, but, hopefully his health is like 100%, or as close to 100% as it's going to be. But that's still asking a lot, for a guy who nearly died. So yeah, there's so many questions, some of which are answerable and some of which time will tell. But as it turns out, there were the people who I was out with tonight are pretty savvy business people here, and with major companies, and two of them just said flat out, co-CEOs never work, which was an interesting thing. And the other one of them said that whatever anyone says, the guy who owns the most shares is still the guy who in the end has the power. And Vince, unless he divests himself, which I do not, he has not done that, and I don't believe he is going to do that until there's a sale. And of course, what does this mean for a sale? It probably means, the sales, the bit with the sale is, if the right offer comes, they were going to be sold yesterday, a year ago, tomorrow. The right offer didn't come. Would Vince, if Vince pushed and said, like Lorenzo Fertitta, when UFC was sold, this was not a situation of, Endeavor coming and going like, Lorenzo, we're going to make you an offer that you can't refuse. It was Lorenzo waking up one day for reasons that, probably have never been discussed, and just said, I built this thing. I'm tired of this thing. I'm tired of certain aspects of this thing, and I want to sell. Somebody lined up a bunch of bidders, and they lined up a whole bunch of bidders. So that's what happened there. So again, there's been nobody lining up the bidders that we know of, but if the offer came, I mean, Vince has been willing to sell since 2016, and he saw the UFC offer at $4 billion, but nobody made him that offer. So, whether this makes it easier or harder, I don't know that question, but everyone's talking about, well, the sale and this and that, and Nick was brought in to facilitate the sale, and that's a reasonable assumption. There's all kinds of points.
Well, I think that obviously, I think part of it is it's going to all depend on the next 6, 12, next 2 years. If everything continues along and the ratings are stable and everything is a well-oiled machine without Vince, then I think that people will still be interested in buying the company. If he's gone and the thing collapses, then that would be something completely different.
Now, there may be a lot of power grabs. In fact, I think
sure, yeah, but I mean,
and that's going to be interesting. I think at the end, you need one boss, and it's probably going to be Nick. I mean, it's going to be Nick on the business end, but on the wrestling end, it's probably going to be Paul and Stephanie. And, that's just what it, and will Vince be pulling strings? I've got to think he will. There's also the question is, will Vince come back? I mean, I never say anything is final. And a lot depends on the reasons he left are not going to go away if he chooses to come back, but he could look at this and go, look at Hogan, look at Flair, look at everyone, and it dies down. I mean, no one knows it dies down better than Vince. He went through the Benoit thing, you know what I mean? Which was hell. But in the end, it died down. I got to believe, that there's obviously the investigation was probably not in his favor, because if it was, he wasn't leaving. Will there be more stories? There's always those rumors. Time will certainly tell. We know of stories. And what they are, again, I think a lot of this is going to come out in the wash in the next couple weeks. There's so much more. But it's like, gone forever. Probably, but it's like, don't be shocked with anything. This is pro wrestling. Look, Stephanie just left and got buried on the way out. She's the co-CEO today. You know what I'm saying?
She left and got buried. Hunter was gone, and now he's back. And
well, yeah, but he was gone. He was gone for health reasons. I mean, no, he was gone. He was gone.
Well, he was removed as the head of NXT. I mean, that was his role.
No, he wasn't. He was removed as the head of talent relations because they thought he was wearing too many hats. And then the NXT thing, he was not removed as the head of NXT. He got sick and Sean took over. But the situation, I mean, he never had ultimate power. That was still Vince. I mean, those people, people went over his head, Vince McMahon, to change the face of what this is, which does become an interesting thing because, that was Vince's call, but it was also a Nick Khan call. And what, I think that the decision is what NXT, but there can be a million things that happen, including with NXT. As far as like what's going to happen now. Well,
I would consider him being replaced at NXT and the whole NXT 2.0 and the revamp and the colors and I mean that stuff was going to happen whether he would have still been in charge had he not gotten sick, but he the structure of what happened with NXT that's Vincent that was Vincent Nick Khan who just said like this thing's not working. Exactly. That's my point. Like, that's what happened. He was in the position of being the guy who was told, your vision isn't working here.
Yes,
we're going to totally revamp this thing.
That's true. Yeah.
And
right.
Now here he is back in a position of power.
Yeah, but I mean, he still would have had power there, but he wouldn't have had ultimate power. And he still doesn't have, I mean, he probably has more power with Vince gone, and it does become interesting because Nick is not going to be the guy who runs the creative end. He's going to be the guy who runs the business end. So that, that's all those decisions. That's an interesting one too. I mean, do they go back to wanting more experienced wrestlers, or is this decision something that he's on board with? Because if this decision is something that he's not on board with, he's gonna have power. His wife is a co-CEO. Of course, the other CEO, we know what the other CEO thinks, and that's right there. And then that's right there the issue. That's an issue. So who makes the call?
Well, I believe from watching the old version of NXT when Hunter was in that position and comparing it to what we saw in the main roster, and even watching SmackDown tonight. I mean, obviously tonight is still, they rewrote portions of the show and everything like that, but I mean, the commentary was a little more relaxed. There was nobody screaming at the announcers on the headsets. The New Day was out there. They mentioned Ring of Honor. They mentioned the IWGP Tag Team titles. Michael Cole was talking about the fans, and he actually called them fans. He didn't say the WWE Universe. He had the WWE fans. So even there were little things on the show that to me made the show already feel more organic than it did even a week ago. And given, he was willing to push guys that didn't have the Vince McMahon look and the Vince McMahon body and the whole nine. Yeah. He was willing to look at the top stars on the indie scene. So I am hopeful that we will see more of that and less of this very, very rigid.
You're right about the rigid aspect in the sense of Vince always had that rigid viewpoint of who could be a top guy. And he shared that with many people there. However, that doesn't mean that those people he shared it with are going to be the ones who wind up in power. So yes, that could go in many different directions as far as it's too early to say anything.
That is true, but he had personal weird quirks. The weird. Yeah, can people start getting their names back? Can we talk about belts again?
Names back is a different type of a decision. As far as like using the term belts, I think that one probably will come back because.
Names was a Vince call when he decided that he didn't want whatever,
Yeah, but that's for trademark and merchandising reasons, and that could be.
Yeah, but there's no reason that Theory cannot be Austin Theory.
Yeah, I suppose isn't.
I mean, he's going to go to AEW as Austin. Yeah. I mean, does that make a difference?
I guess time will tell what we see, going forward in that direction. But I mean, as far as, I just remember a conversation from years ago when Levesque had watched a boxing match and, the guys came out with the belts and they called it belts on the air. And all of a sudden it was like, hey, they call them belts there. It's not like it's some regional pro wrestling thing that Vince was mad at. It's like, in the real world, you know what I mean? So it's like, his take on that was not calling them belts or banning the word belts because it's got a connotation of regional pro wrestling was ludicrous. Now we'll see if that could be one of those things that changes.
He had a guy in NXT that's named Johnny Wrestling. So I find it hard to believe that with Vince, if Vince is truly out of the picture, calling no shots, that we're not going to be allowed to call people wrestlers and talk about wrestling.
Well, that I would suspect. I would strongly suspect because he never had an aversion for the word professional wrestling, which Vince did. Of course, Stephanie is Vince's daughter, and she was trained by Vince. So you've got that too. So there's just a lot of things that are, a lot of different personality things that are going to come up. And I mean, at the end of the day, and the other thing too is like, who, like, no matter what anyone says, I mean, Nick could have been fired at any time, but now, I mean, I'm not saying he couldn't be fired, but who's going to fire you know what I'm saying? It's like, if he doesn't get into a scandal, and I would strongly suspect he will not, who fires the CEO? So that, I mean, his vision and direction and things as far as the business end is going to be very interesting. I mean, as far as everything goes, he's going to be the ones negotiating the big deal, which is TV contracts and rights fees and Hulu deal and all of the stuff. The big financial stuff is Nick's stuff. But I mean, as far as the wrestling end goes, it could be Paul Levesque after all. Partially because nobody else has really been trained for it, and they don't have anyone else, experienced at it. I mean, you got Bruce, who's got experience in it. You got Jarrett, who does have experience for years doing it. Not necessarily successful, but certainly experience and comes from a lineage and all that. But I mean, as far as others, I suppose, that's pretty much it. Now, is Gabe going to come back? Sapolsky? Of course, what he did was very different because he didn't do television like Jarrett did, but Gabe did a really good job of booking, at one point with Ring of Honor and everything like that. And he was, part of the crew that was let go. Production wise, are we going to see changes? I mean, it was
sure as hell hope so.
It was always, it's like Kevin Dunn's situation. It was always said that when Vince is gone, Kevin would leave and Levesque would bring in his crew that he'd been grooming at NXT. So is that going to happen? A lot of questions. I mean, as far as like the Vince thing, it's been interesting seeing the coverage. Everyone knows the reason that he's gone, even, it's called a retirement. I mean, obviously, in some way, shape, or form, he was forced out. It's so stunning to see it happen. Why, but, and there must be something even more than what we've heard for it to happen. Because that last round, in and of itself, there wasn't so much that was forcing him out that we could see. The stock price didn't collapse or anything like that. So there must be something, whether it's stuff they know is happening or whatever it is. They felt that it was time to make the move. And the one thing I always thought with Vince was, like, people think that Vince would want to kill it on the way out. I know he wouldn't, the only thing that was going to get Vince out was saving, is something that he believed that he had to do it for the good of the company. And I think that in the end was the situation here, for whatever reason, and it's not, again, there was nothing that is broken yet that has caused this great grief that we know of. We have not heard of sponsors fleeing. We have not heard of pressure from NBCU or Fox. There might have been something behind the scenes, and that will all come out at some point if that's the case. Or it could be, again, that there's more and, patterns and everything. There was a lot there.
Hey, if you're a big fan of Wrestling Observer Radio, we got 12,000 episodes of all of our podcasts up at our website, WrestlingObserver.com. If you sign up today, you get access to every single one of them. The 12 to 18 new shows that we do every single week. You can podcast them, listen to them on the road, at work, working out, in the shower, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And also full access to the Wrestling Observer newsletter and archives. So if you love what you hear, head to WrestlingObserver.com. 12,000 audio shows at your fingertips.